The sound of an axe echoed through the forest.
Da, 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 done.
A loud scream shattered the morning silence.
The men working nearby dropped their bundles of firewood and ran toward the sound.
When they arrived, they found a strong young woodcutter lying on the ground. His axe was several steps away, but the tree he had tried to cut stood untouched, as though no blade had ever touched it. The young man stared into the branches above him with eyes full of terror.
His lips trembled.
They were watching me. Before anyone could ask what he meant, he fainted.
That evening, no one dared to return to that part of the forest.
The elders simply shook their heads.
We warned him, one of them whispered. Some trees were never meant to be cut down.
And every child in the village knew that.
But not everyone believed the old stories.
The next morning, the village woke as it always did.
Women swept their compounds before sunrise. Children chased one another along the narrow paths. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Farmers sharpened their hoes before heading to their farms.
Near the edge of the village, a cheerful young man named John tightened the rope around a bundle of firewood. John was known for his strength. He feared no forest. He laughed louder than everyone else. Whenever the elders warned people about spirits, he smiled politely, but never truly believed them. His widowed mother Mary watched him from the doorway. "You are going into the forest again today?" she asked.
John smiled.
Of course, firewood won't gather itself.
Mary folded her arms.
"I heard what happened yesterday."
So did I.
John shrugged. "I think the young man was frightened by something ordinary."
Mary frowned. Not everything can be explained that way.
John kissed her lightly on the forehead.
I'll be careful.
She sighed.
"I pray you will." As John walked toward the forest, he met his closest friend, Peter, carrying a basket.
You heard about the woodcutter? Peter asked.
John nodded.
The whole village has.
Peter lowered his voice.
My father says he tried to cut that tree.
John smiled.
Everyone keeps saying that tree.
Peter looked around before speaking again.
You've never seen it?
No. It is huge. Older than anyone can remember.
John laughed.
So it's just an old tree.
Peter didn't laugh. My grandfather said our ancestors were already calling it ancient.
John became curious.
And no one has ever cut it. Peter shook his head. No.
Why?
Because no one wants to die.
John laughed again, but Peter's face remained serious.
For the first time, John's smile faded.
The two friends spent the morning gathering fallen branches.
Birds sang overhead.
The cool wind carried the smell of fresh leaves.
Everything felt peaceful.
Around midday, they met an elderly hunter named Samuel returning from deeper inside the forest.
His face looked troubled. He stopped when he saw them.
You're gathering wood?
Yes, John replied. Samuel pointed his walking stick toward the distant trees.
Stay away from the eastern side. John exchanged a glance with Peter.
The sacred trees there?
Peter asked.
Samuel nodded slowly.
I saw footprints.
John looked confused.
Footprints.
They began at the tree. And where did they lead?
Samuel stared silently into the forest.
They disappeared.
John laughed nervously.
Perhaps someone walked there.
Samuel shook his head. They were not human.
A cold breeze passed between them.
The old hunter continued walking without another word.
Peter swallowed hard. I don't like this. John forced a smile.
Old hunters enjoy telling stories.
But deep inside,
a tiny seed of curiosity had begun to grow.
That evening, the entire village gathered beneath the meeting shelter.
The chief elder Daniel stood before everyone. His voice was calm.
You have all heard what happened yesterday. Everyone nodded.
The forest feeds us.
It gives us medicine.
It gives us wood.
But there are places where we do not go.
He paused.
Our fathers respected those places.
So did their fathers. Respect has kept this village safe.
The young man stood up.
But why? The elder looked toward the forest before answering. Because not every living thing belongs to man.
Silence filled the gathering. Then another elder spoke.
The great tree has stood longer than any family alive today.
No one planted it.
No one remembers when it first appeared.
It has watched generations come and go.
John listened quietly.
Part of him wanted to believe.
Another part refused.
How could one tree frighten an entire village?
That night,
John lay awake.
the words of the elders replayed in his mind.
Not every living thing belongs to man.
He closed his eyes.
Suddenly, he heard something outside.
Whistle. A soft wind.
Then again,
Whistle.
he sat up. The night was still.
No rain. No storm. Just the wind.
Then, very softly, someone called his name.
John.
His eyes flew open.
He rushed outside.
The moonlight covered the compound. Nobody was there.
Only the old mango tree swaying gently.
Mary stepped outside carrying a small lamp.
What is it?
I heard someone.
She looked around.
There is no one.
John hesitated.
I heard my name. Mary's face changed immediately. She held his wrist. Come inside. It was probably the wind.
No,
Her voice became firm.
when the wind calls your name.
She stopped herself. John stared at her.
When the wind calls your name.
What?
Mary looked frightened.
Never answer it.
She closed the door without saying another word.
John barely slept again.
The following morning,
Curiosity got the better of him.
instead of collecting wood near the usual paths, he quietly walked toward the eastern side of the forest. Peter noticed.
John turned. Where are you going? Just looking around.
Peter hurried after him.
You promised your mother you'd stay away.
I'm only looking.
Looking becomes walking. Walking becomes trouble.
John laughed.
You worry too much.
The forest slowly became quieter. The birds disappeared.
Even the insects seemed to stop singing.
Peter grabbed John's arm. Do you hear that? John, listen.
Nothing.
Exactly nothing.
No birds.
No wind.
No sound.
His heartbeat suddenly seemed louder than everything else.
Then, they saw it. Far ahead.
A tree so enormous that its branches covered the sky.
Its roots rose from the ground like giant snakes.
Strange white cloth strips hung from some of its lower branches, old and faded with time.
Clay pots rested around the base of the trunk.
No one had touched them in years. Peter whispered, "We should leave."
John couldn't move.
The tree felt alive.
Not because it moved.
But because it seemed to be watching them.
A cold wind circled only that part of the forest.
The rest of the trees remained perfectly still.
John took one slow step forward.
Peter grabbed him.
Don't.
Before John could answer, a dry branch snapped somewhere behind them.
Both men spun round.
No one was there.
Then another snap.
Closer.
John called out.
Who's there?
No reply.
Only silence. Then,
From high inside the giant tree,
something slowly opened its eyes.
John froze.
Peter's breathing became rapid. Neither of them could move.
And then,
A deep whisper fluttered down from the branches.
leave.
John and Peter stood frozen. Neither of them dared to breathe. The giant tree towered above them, its branches stretching across the sky like the arms of an ancient giant.
The faded white cloths hanging from the branches barely moved, yet the whisper had been clear.
Leave. Peter grabbed John's wrist so tightly it hurt. You heard it too, he whispered.
John swallowed.
I did.
Another cold breeze circled them.
It came from nowhere, touching only the ground around the great tree.
Peter pulled harder.
We're going. This time, John did not argue.
The two young men turned and hurried back toward the familiar footpath.
Only when birds began singing again did they finally stop to catch their breath. Neither spoke for several moments.
At last Peter broke the silence.
If anyone asks, we never went there.
John nodded.
For the first time in his life, he was no longer certain that the elders' stories were only stories.
That evening, Mary noticed the change in her son.
Normally, John would laugh while eating.
Tonight he barely touched his food.
She watched him quietly.
You went there.
John looked up. How did you know?
A mother's eyes see what words try to hide.
John sighed. I only wanted to see the tree. He hesitated. We heard a voice.
Mary closed her eyes.
Oh, John.
It told us to leave. She slowly placed her bowl aside.
When I was a little girl, my grandmother told me something.
John looked at her.
Long before you were born, strangers once came to this land. They cared nothing for our customs. They laughed at the elders and decided to cut down the great tree.
What happened?
They raised their axes.
She paused.
But before the first strike landed, a strong wind surrounded them.
John leaned forward. They ran away. Mary shook her head.
Only two returned.
John felt a chill.
And the others?
No one ever saw them again.
Silence filled the room.
The next morning, the story spread through the village that something strange had happened. One of the hunters had found fresh axe marks on another tree near the sacred one. But no one admitted going there. The elders became uneasy. Chief Elder Daniel called for another gathering. This is no longer curiosity, he said. Someone is testing the patience of powers older than ourselves. A murmur spread through the crowd.
Then an elderly woman named Grace slowly stood.
Her voice was soft but carried across the gathering. The spirits protect what was entrusted to them. We protect our homes.
They protect theirs.
John listened carefully. He noticed that none of the elders spoke with fear. Instead,
they spoke with respect.
There was a difference. Later that day, John met Samuel, the old hunter, near the stream. Samuel sat quietly repairing one of his traps. John greeted him respectfully.
May I ask you something?
Samuel nodded. You saw the tree many times, didn't you?
I have.
Have you ever gone close?
The old hunter smiled faintly. Closer than most.
John's eyes widened. What did you see? Samuel looked toward the forest.
When I was young, I was as proud as you.
John lowered his head.
I wanted to prove I feared nothing.
What happened?
Samuel rolled up his sleeve.
A long scar stretched from his wrist to his elbow.
I ignored every warning.
John stared silently.
I raised my cutlass toward one of the tree's roots. I heard someone call my name. John's heart skipped.
The same thing happened to me. Samuel nodded slowly.
I answered. John's face became pale. What happened after that?
The old hunter looked away.
I woke up 3 days later beside the river. You don't remember anything?
I remember enough.
What? Samuel's voice became barely a whisper. I remember many faces watching me. Were they people?
I don't know.
They looked like shadows wearing human shapes.
John felt goosebumps rise on his arms.
Samuel stirred. Some memories are not gifts. Then he walked away. That night, John dreamed. He stood beneath the great tree. The forest was silent.
Thousands of tiny lights floated around the branches like stars.
An elderly man dressed in white stood beside the trunk. His face was calm.
You have come. John looked around.
Who are you?
I have watched this place longer than you can imagine.
John frowned.
Are you a spirit?
The old man smiled.
Names are not important.
What do you want from me? The old man pointed toward the roots. Listen.
John knelt.
At first.
Nothing.
Then.
Very faintly.
He heard voices.
No one.
Not 10. Hundreds.
Some were laughing.
Some were praying.
Some were singing ancient songs.
Others sounded as though they were warning someone.
John jumped backward.
What is this? The old man answered quietly.
The roots remember. Before John could ask another question,
He woke up.
His body was covered in sweat.
the sun had not yet risen.
But as
He could hear the wind,
softly,
almost gently, whistling.
days pass.
John tried to forget everything.
He returned to his normal routine.
He helped his mother repair their fens.
He carried yams from the farm.
He joked with children fetching water.
Little by little, life felt normal again. Until one afternoon,
The peaceful routine was broken. A loud cry echoed through the village.
Fire.
Everyone rushed outside. One family's barn was burning.
Men formed lines, passing buckets of water.
Women carried frightened children away. The flames died before reaching nearby houses. Everyone sighed with relief.
then the oldest elder looked toward the forest.
The warning has begun.
No one understood what he meant.
But John's heart became heavy.
3 days later,
The village stream began to dry.
Fish floated lifeless near the
Shallow water.
Farmers complained that their crops were wilting despite recent rain.
Even the birds seemed fewer each morning.
The elders became troubled. Grace spoke quietly.
the balance is breaking. Peter whispered to John.
Do you think this
Has something to do with the tree.
John didn't answer.
Because he was beginning to wonder the same thing.
That evening, John finally made a decision.
I have to know the truth.
Peter almost dropped the basket he was carrying.
Have you lost your mind?
If something is wrong, someone has to understand it.
We've already seen enough.
I won't touch the tree.
Peter folded his arms.
You said that the first time.
John smiled nervously. And I mean it this time.
Peter sighed deeply.
If you're going,
He paused.
I'm coming too. John smiled.
I knew you would. Before sunrise the next morning, the two friends quietly entered the forest again.
This time they carried no axes,
No cutlasses.
only a lantern, drinking water and walking sticks. The deeper they walked, the quieter the forest became.
Soon,
They reached the great tree once more. It looked exactly as before,
silent.
ancient.
Watching, John stepped closer than he had ever dared before. He noticed something hidden beneath a curtain of hanging roots,
A narrow opening.
Almost like a doorway leading underground.
Peter stared. I don't remember seeing that. It wasn't there before, John whispered.
A cool breeze flowed from the darkness below. Then,
A voice came from inside the hidden passage.
Not angry. Not frightening,
calm.
as if it had been waiting for them all along.
John,
Peter's eyes widened.
it knows your name.
The voice spoke again.
If you seek the truth.
A long silence followed.
Then came the
Words that made both young men tremble.
Come beneath the roots.
John and Peter stood at the entrance beneath the giant roots.
Neither of them spoke. The narrow opening was dark, yet a cool breeze flowed from within, carrying the scent of damp earth and old leaves.
Peter's hands trembled.
John,
We can still go back.
John looked into the darkness.
If we leave now, we'll spend the rest of our lives wondering what was waiting for us.
Peter sighed deeply.
I hope we don't regret this.
John lit the lantern.
Its small flame pushed back the darkness just enough for them to see a narrow passage. Together they stepped inside.
The tunnel was silent. The walls were covered with thick roots that twisted around one another like giant snakes.
Water dripped slowly from the ceiling.
Each drop echoed through the passage.
After several minutes, the tunnel opened into a wide underground chamber.
John, stop. Peter gasped.
The room was unlike anything they had ever seen.
The roots of the great tree stretched across the ceiling like the pillars of a great house.
Hundreds of small clay pots rested neatly along the walls.
Some were old and cracked. Others looked as though they had been placed there only yesterday. In the center of the chamber stood a smooth stone. On it rested a wooden staff. The moment John stepped closer,
The lantern went out.
darkness swallowed everything. Peter grabbed John's arm.
I can't see.
Then,
Tiny lights began appearing all around them. One, then another.
Soon the entire chamber glowed with soft golden lights floating gently through the air like fireflies. The room became bright once again.
But there was no lantern.
Only the mysterious lights.
a familiar voice spoke behind them.
You came.
The two friends turned quickly. The elderly man from John's dream stood there. He wore simple white clothing.
His face was peaceful.
His eyes carried great wisdom. John gathered his courage.
Who are you?
The old man smiled.
I am only a guardian.
A guardian of what?
He slowly raised his hand toward the enormous roots above.
Of this place.
Peter whispered.
Who are you?
A spirit. The old man did not answer directly.
Some call us spirits. Others call us ancestors.
Others simply call us the keepers. What matters is not our name. What matters is our duty. John looked around the chamber. What is this place?
The guardian smiled.
Long before your grandparents were born,
Before their grandparents.
This land was dry.
there was little water.
Crops failed.
People became hungry.
The ancestors prayed for help.
John listened carefully.
The Creator answered their prayers. He blessed this land through one living tree.
The roots reached deep beneath the earth.
They protected the water.
They held the soil together.
They gave shelter to birds, animals, and countless living things. Peter looked upward.
So,
This tree protects the land.
The guardian nodded.
yes,
It has always protected those who respected it. John frowned. Then why do people hear voices?
The guardian walked slowly toward the great roots.
because not everyone comes with a pure heart.
When greedy people arrive.
The tree warns them.
When proud people arrive.
The tree humbles them.
When those who seek
Wisdom arrive. The tree teaches them. John remembered the whisper. Leave. The guardian looked at him kindly. You were warned because your heart was uncertain.
John lowered his eyes.
I thought the elders believed foolish stories.
No,
They understood something your generation was beginning to forget.
Suddenly,
the ground shook.
Dust fell from the ceiling. Peter stepped backward. What was that? The guardian's peaceful expression disappeared.
They have come. Who?
those who care only about profit.
Before anyone could ask another question, the chamber faded. John blinked. He and Peter were suddenly standing outside the tree again.
It was late afternoon.
Voices echoed through the forest.
Several strangers carrying sharp axes were walking toward the sacred tree.
With them were two young men from a neighbouring village.
One of the strangers laughed. Look at this giant tree.
It will bring us enough timber for many months.
Another man spat on the ground.
Old stories don't frighten me. John ran forward.
Stop.
The men turned. One of them frowned.
Who are you?
This tree must not be cut.
The leader laughed loudly. Move aside.
Peter joined John. The elders warned everyone. The man laughed even harder. We answer to no elder. The leader lifted his axe. He swung with all his strength.
That.
The blade struck the trunk. Instantly, the forest became silent.
No birds.
No insects. No wind. Everything stopped.
The men looked around nervously.
The sky darkened. Clouds gathered overhead.
The air grew cold.
One of the strangers whispered.
What is happening? Before anyone answered,
A powerful wind burst through the forest.
Leaves spun wildly.
Branches bent low.
The men's hats flew away.
Their axes slipped from their hands. The earth shook beneath their feet.
From every direction came whispers.
Hundreds of them.
Too many voices to count.
Some sounded like old men.
Some like women,
Some like children.
all saying the same words. Leave. Leave. Leave.
The strangers stumbled backward.
Fear replaced their laughter.
One dropped to his knees.
Another covered his ears,
The leader tried to pick up his axe again.
but the axe would not move.
It was as though invisible hands held it firmly to the ground.
His confidence disappeared.
We're leaving.
He shouted.
Without looking back, every one of them ran out of the forest.
The two young men who had guided them also fled,
Crying as they ran.
Within moments,
The forest became peaceful again.
Birds return.
the wind softened. Sunlight broke through the clouds. It was as though nothing had happened.
John and Peter slowly approached the great tree. The guardian appeared one final time.
You have seen enough.
John nodded respectfully. I understand now.
The guardian smiled.
The elders did not protect this tree because they worshipped it. They protected it because they understood its purpose.
Some traditions are born from fear, but the wisest traditions are born from knowledge.
Peter asked, "Will anyone ever see you again?"
The guardian looked toward the sky.
Whenever people remember to protect what gives them life.
I am already there.
His form slowly faded into the afternoon light.
Then he was gone. John and Peter returned to the village before sunset. This time they told the elders everything.
No one interrupted.
When they finished, Chief Elder Daniel smiled gently.
I wondered how long it would take.
John looked surprised.
You knew. The elder nodded.
My grandfather once stood where you stood. He too learned that the greatest protection is respect.
John bowed his head.
I was wrong.
Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder.
Wisdom begins the moment we admit we still have something to learn. From that day forward, John became one of the strongest defenders of the forest.
Whenever children asked why no one cut down the great tree,
He never answered with threats or frightening stories.
instead he would take them to the edge of the forest and point toward the towering branches.
He would say, "Some trees are older than our memories.
They give us clean water.
They protect the land.
They shelter countless living creatures."
Our ancestors wrapped these truths inside stories so that even children would remember them.
And when people respect nature,
Nature often returns that respect. The children would look at the giant tree with wonder instead of fear.
years later, John grew old.
Whenever visitors asked why that one enormous tree still stood untouched while others had long been cut for timber, the villagers would simply smile and reply,
Not everything that stands in a forest is ours to take,
Some would laugh. Some would believe.
but those who walked near the great tree with humble hearts always felt the same cool breeze.
And the quiet peace that surrounded it.
No one ever tried to cut it down again.
Though